I kind of just want to talk about my outlook for Bitcoin, what I'm looking for, and also what I'm fearful of. So, if you guys recall, if you've been with me since the start of these like YouTube videos that I've been making, back in February, I made a video titled "Fear of Chop," right? And that was the fear. That was the inherent sort of worst case scenario for me at the time was that we had done something significant that we weren't really able to do in the prior 3 months, and that's something significant that we were not able to do led to negative 45% downtrend over the course of those 3 months. So uh, the fear was that the time that we actually managed to do something different, when I'm coming in here and I'm bull posting and saying, haha, this time's different. My system, triggered bullishly, blah, 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 whatever. And my system is simple. Don't overcomplicate it. I use fucking blue and green lines and something like market structure, and I'll draw some gray boxes to kind of get an idea of where I perceive, horizontal resistance and support. Right? I have a video on my system as well to kind of give you guys a better understanding. But when my system flips bullish, right? And prior to that, it had just been outright bearish for 3 months. And then I go bullish, and then I'm forced back into assuming a bearish trend again, only after a measly, right? So this is kind of give you an example, a measly 10% over, a trivial 2 week period or whatever, however long that time is. But the idea is it's measly. It's still 10 fucking percent, right? I mean, don't get me wrong. That is, pretty nice. It's amazing gains, but it's measly. It's minuscule in comparison to what we would sort of anticipate as a result of doing something opposite, directionally proportional to the opposite of what we just did. Negative 45% over 3 months, right? You would think that you would get more than just a 2 week push upwards, with only 10%, since your system flips bullish. And then you're forced back into being bearish again, right? And then you only get a negative 12% downtrend over the course of the next 2 weeks after that. And then you're forced back into being bullish again. So all of a sudden, your system has gone from an edge, it has been alpha, right, for those 3 months for that negative 45%, whatever, to now it's just fucking useless, right? You're getting chopped the hell up. You're flip flopping. You're buying, high and then selling low and then whatever, right? It's painful. So the fear was back in February, and you guys can go watch the video if you desire. But the fear was that we would do this exactly, right? And that instead of finding a trend, instead of doing something directionally sort of proportional to what we had just done, we just kind of said, fuck all of you. Fuck bulls, fuck bears. We're just going to crab sideways for the rest of forever and make sure that all of you have a adamant, certainty on price going higher over here and price going much lower over here. And we're just going to get that to an extreme point where we come to a climax eventually. And then from there, we determine a sort of midterm trend, right? And then we kind of push upwards for like 20% or whatever, right? And then we fall back inside that like range and we lose the trend all over again, blah, 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 yada, yada. And that brings us to where we are today, because that sort of loss of that higher time frame uptrend, the fall back inside the range, the deviation, right, is what this would be called. I think I have a video on range trading too. I'm not sure. But the deviation back into the range, the loss of the trend thereafter should kind of make you think that, okay, we're going to mid range. We're probably going to go to range lows, which is somewhere like over here. And we might even break down below the range altogether, right? We don't actually know. And at that point, we're just kind of resuming the initial trend that we had all the way back here, right? So now this entire consolidation period was fuel to that fire. It was fuel to the overall grand scheme downtrend on something like a weekly chart, right? So that's the fear today. The fear isn't chop. The fear is that we're going to repeat fucking February all over again, right? And so, yeah, the fear is chop. Ideally, this is kind of like the swing long, spot entry zone in terms of like if you're going to bet on uptrend, this is the place to do it, right? Which also means that if we don't maintain the uptrend here, then we're all of a sudden no longer threatening uptrend, right? So if we don't maintain that region, we're no longer threatening uptrend. We're now threatening downtrend or chop, right? And now those are the two scenarios that we have to be open minded to. As of right now, I'm still open minded to uptrend and chop. But I had an idea of, okay, well, I initially got into some spot and some swing long entries, or yeah, well, it was a swing long. Some swing long entries somewhere around here, around 21.6K. And then I got rid of those entries because we lost the very, very local trend. Right. So we lost this low time frame uptrend. We were kind of breaking it down, or at least I was in my head, that this was like a snowball. Right. So we tapped range lows, we reclaimed the trend. All of a sudden, now this is a snowball of strength that is forming. Right. So that snowball is anticipated to get a little bit bigger, and we kind of just want to see how far it goes. Does it get crushed? Right? Do we just go to range highs and then we lose that snowball all over again? Now we're just ranging, we're just continuing the range, right? Or does that snowball get much, much bigger and we end up breaking out above the 4 hour 200s, above the range, right? And we're still maintaining the initial uptrend, right? The snowball that started all the way down here, right? And as long as you're acknowledging this snowball of strength down here, then all you have to do here is expand off of that idea. You don't have to kind of flip on a dime and say, oh, well, I was macro bearish yesterday right here. And now here I am macro bullish, right? And then come back, whatever, 4 days later or whatever. And now we're trading at the exact same price where you just flipped high time frame bullish. Now you're getting chopped the fuck up, right? Because you're not remaining actionable on those lower time frames. You're not scaling assumptions upwards. You're kind of just trying to apply a very high time frame swing strategy, trend strategy, and hoping and praying that it works. And if it doesn't work, you have absolutely no backup plan whatsoever. Right? That is the exact opposite of the mindset that I want to be in. So I'm scaling assumptions. So I'm scaling into. I'm not scaling into. I'm kind of just buying spot openly and opening up some swing longs. Scalp longs in hindsight. But once we lose that trend, that's why I'm going to cut that swing long or scalp long position, right? And when we reclaim that trend, theoretically, that should be kind of like the okay, well, we downtrended, we should have pulled back to this region, but in hindsight, that should be the local low now because here we are reclaiming this trend all over again, right? So we have kind of melted our snowball of strength with this price action below it only to reclaim it. So what does that tell you? That tells you in hindsight, this is probably the low, right? And if it's not the low and we end up breaking back down below that trend, then you're probably going to get this entry, right? Or you might even just get some choppy sideways price action. So this kind of needed to be the low for me to be convinced that, we are going to continue uptrending and we are going to threaten an extreme sort of bear relief rally or whatever and get all these people FOMOing in as we, run it back turbo to 28K or 30K or whatever. But it wasn't. We lost the trend. We should have pulled back deeper to test our higher time frame trend. I say should have, but price action doesn't need to do whatever the fuck you need it to do, right? It can do whatever the fuck it wants. But that kind of opened up the gate of opportunity for us to kind of look for and anticipate a deeper pullback. Except in hindsight, we were kind of forced to assume that that's not the pullback. I mean, this is the pullback, right? This is now the low. Here we are. We're going to run it back turbo. We reclaim strength all over again. This sort of price action as a trend trader is the same kind of context as all of this price action prior. So we kind of just have to assume that this is a new trend, right? And that we're going to continue running it back turbo. But from there, right, your system goes from alpha, and it was not really all that useful here. I know there's a lot of scribbles, but you get the point. It's not really all that useful here, and then it's totally useless, and then it continues to be totally useless, right? So at that point, you want to stop acknowledging that trend. You want to kind of adjust away from it and render it useless and look towards something else to kind of rely on to base and scale assumptions off of. So then I go to the 30-minute and I'll look at this and I'll say, well, that's pretty good too, right? So I can use this to justify to my puny little tiny brain as to why we're still downtrending. And we're probably going to continue downtrending regardless of this significant region, right? The range highs, the 4 hour 200s. As long as we remain below this trend, then we absolutely threaten losing this region, falling back inside the range, going to mid range, going to range lows, right? And then maybe even breaking down below the range lows altogether. Or maybe just chopping sideways for, oh, fuck, I don't know, maybe the next 3 months, right? Nobody actually knows. So as long as we remain below this trend, I'm going to be cautious of either downside or chop. And as long as we remain above the 4 hour 200s, I kind of have to be aware that the high time frame analysis is still kind of implying uptrend. And then if anything other than uptrend happens, then my sort of hunch was right, right? And I can thank the lower time frame kind of scaling assumptions idea for keeping me out of a position and trying to just bet on a higher time frame trend and hoping and praying that it actually does kind of resolve towards the upside. Whereas I can wait for something like this local trend to kind of get reclaimed. And then from there, I can say, all right, well, in hindsight, the high time frame uptrend is probably uptrending on high time frames, right? And then I can readjust from there. So it's all about just kind of using these lower time frames to scale assumptions to either further validate any sort of hunches or instincts or fears that you might have, or totally negate those fears and kind of put you back into this nice fluid system where your system is telling you what to do, but you don't quite believe it just yet, right? So you can validate it both ways, and this is exactly how I'm looking to break down Bitcoin price action, and I'll be playing off of whatever happens in everything that I just discussed in this video. That's how I'm going to be playing off of it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. This should be an actionable sort of analysis. So you should not have to kind of like DM me on Twitter 2 days from now and say, oh, what are you doing? You know exactly what I'm doing, right? You know exactly the sort of input that I'm going to have, the outlook that the insight that I'm going to have on Bitcoin and how I'm going to look to approach it in my own trading. So hopefully this helps. If you guys like this video, like, comment, subscribe, all the YouTube influencer bullshit. Go use my Bybit ref link because that really helps me a ton if you do. And if you're just so kind and you want me to enjoy some avocado toast during the bear market in the event that the 4 hour 200s don't hold and the range high doesn't hold, and this all ends up being a deviation, you can donate to any of the addresses that I have in the description below. So help me get out of my grandmother's basement and enjoy some avocado toast. But anyways, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed the video. Much love. Take it easy.